In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the rear caliper on this Dodge Grand Caravan. Let's get started. With a 19mm socket, remove all 5 of your lug nuts and then remove the wheel. Remove the wheel. On the new caliper, you'll notice there's a spring here. Of course, your old caliper should also have one, but mine is missing. This is part of the reason why this is getting replaced. If you have it here, to disconnect the parking brake cable, you may or may not need to use a pry bar or anything of that nature to basically hold this lever in the engaged position. Obviously, I'm missing the spring, so there's nothing holding this lever or pulling this lever back for me. We're gonna have to remove this cable now. To do that, you're gonna need one hand to pull outwards on it and the other one to pry these 2 little clips in, tabs, to basically unlock it. And then it's slotted right over here, so as soon as we go out, we're gonna have to go in and then let go of it. So, pry these as you're trying to pull out on it. There's one underneath. There we go. All right. And out like that. Perfect. With a 15mm wrench or socket, break the banjo bolt free so that it can be easier later on when the caliper is off to take this off the caliper. Because fluid is going to start leaking, I'm just going to snug it back up gently, just enough to prevent fluid from leaking, but it will still be broken free for us to remove later. Now use a 13mm and remove both of these bolts to remove the caliper off the bracket. There's 1. And 2. Pull the caliper off. I'm going to set it aside so that it does not pull on the brake hose or the ABS wire, of course. So I'm actually just going to tuck it back here where it's out of the way of the caliper bracket. We can now remove these pads. Now let's remove these 2 18mm bolts holding the caliper onto the knuckle. The other one is down here. It's got a bracket on here too, so keep that in mind. Take that off, remove the bracket as well as the caliper bracket. On the new caliper, let's add a little bit of grease, brake grease or silicone paste to make sure it's rated for brakes if you use that, so that it doesn't melt with heat. And just cover these areas in a very thin layer where the anti-rattle clips are going to sit. This is to prevent rust from building up here. If you put too much, it'll squeeze on the rotor as you install the anti-rattle clips, so you want to avoid that. Take the clips and make sure you put them on the correct side. This little spring here needs to be facing out towards the outside of the bracket. If it's on the inside, it'll hit the rotor. Press it on nice and flush. Just like that. And of course, we'll do the same to the other side. Make sure they clip on all the way. Line up the caliper bracket. I'm going to put the top bolt in first. And that is because this bottom one had a bracket on it. So let's not forget to put that back. Just like so. And then start the bolt in, thread them both on by hand, make sure they start in, and let's bottom them out. There's 1. The torque for both of these is 74 foot-pounds. Now pull out the slider pin. I'm going to add some grease. I'm using that same brake-rated silicone paste for this. I'm going to add some inside this boot, work it into the folds of it. This is going to act as a reserve of grease, and I'm going to put the rest right on the slider. If you put too much on the slider, it'll just get wiped off as you try to slide it through. Put this in, press it in all the way. If there's excess air built up there, squeeze the boot while you press this in. This should press all the air out. And now we'll do the same to the lower one. This lower one will have the rubber bushing on the end here, so make sure you put them back right where they came from. Give it a couple spins. Perfect. To put the pads in, keep in mind they both have wear indicators on them and they both go on the bottom. So the inner pad you can put in by angling it and then sliding it in or twisting it until it snaps in place. It should move freely. If not, something's wrong and it's binding up. Do the same to the outer pad. Okay, there we go. Take your caliper, slide it over the brake pads, line it up with the slider pins. Just like this. Hold it in place and start in whichever bolt lines up first. Let go, start in the other one. The torque for both of these is 26 foot-pounds. All right, if the slider spins when you try to torque it, hold it, but be very gentle if you're using pliers or a wrench so you don't damage the boot. Now let's hook the parking brake cable back onto this lever and then pull on it. Line it back up with this bracket. Sometimes it's a little difficult. There we go. Now using a 15mm socket, remove this bolt here, the banjo bolt. I have a power tool that can do it. It's a lot easier, but since you broke it free earlier, you should be able to remove it by hand as well. Set that caliper down, let it drain, pull the old banjo bolt out. At this point, you'll notice there are washers on here. Well, not on that side, that's good. But there is a washer here. We're gonna have to remove that washer. You don't want two washers stacked on this brake hose. If it's not coming off easily, you can just grab some pliers and pinch it. Usually that'll get it off of there. Now you can wipe the hose, inspect it. It is rusty over here, but it's not rotted. And I got a little bit of debris in there, so I'm going to actually flush it out with some brake cleaner. There we go. I don't want any debris in there to clog up the banjo bolt. Inspect the other side. That looks good too. I'm going to let a couple drops of brake fluid flow through this so that the brake cleaner can be completely out of here. While I do that, I'm going to get my new banjo bolt ready, which is going to have a copper washer on the head side of the bolt. Put it through, and then put another copper washer on the caliper side of the bolt. You basically are trying to sandwich the hose in between these two. This is what's going to create your seal. And then we're going to put the hose right on the new caliper. We're going to start it by hand and then snug it up. With it snugged up, let's torque it. The torque for this banjo bolt is 18 foot-pounds. 11mm socket on this new one. That's it. You're basically just looking to squeeze those copper washers just enough to create a seal. Let's pop off the bleeder screw cap. And with an 11mm wrench or socket, open up the bleeder screw. This is going to allow gravity to pull fluid through and push the air out of the new caliper. This is called a gravity bleed. Once we get a steady trickle of fluid here with minimal or no air, we're going to perform a full manual brake bleed. We have a steady trickle of fluid here. All the air has come out through the gravity bleed. Wipe off any excess drippage, and don't forget to put the rubber cap back on to protect debris from going inside the bleeder screw. Let's get the wheel back on. Put on all 5 of your lug nuts, bottom them out, and then we're going to torque them in a cross pattern to 100 foot-pounds. Once again, 100 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Double check them if you want. Pump up your brakes and take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.